Just wondering, has anybody ever been tired before? Just exhausted? You know what I'm talking about? No, you don't know what I'm talking about. It's funny, sometimes I ask you guys questions expecting a response and I never get one. I knew I'd get a response to that question. Because there is something in the ethos of our culture that is almost proud to be tired. You know what I'm talking about? Like there is something in us that in our culture that wears weariness like a badge of honor. You know, if I came and I asked you and said, so how are you doing? I bet most of you, your immediate response other than, I'm fine, be, I'm tired. I'm so busy, you know, work is going crazy and the kids are driving me nuts and we're in all these activities and I got no time for the things that I actually want to do, my social life, whatever the kid, like I'm just tired because I'm busy. We've not met before. My name's Drew. I'm on the pastoral team. I am, if you're familiar with like something like the Enneagram of personality assessment, I'm an Enneagram 3, which means I'm a performer, I'm an achiever. I like to get stuff done in the most efficient way possible. I'm super competitive. I hate to lose. And whether I would do it consciously or even subconsciously, my default setting is to always try and be the best at whatever I'm doing. If you're familiar with the Clifton Strengths Finder, my top strength out of like 34 different themes that it measures is significance, which just means that whatever I do, I want it to matter. Like I want to make an impact in the world. I want to have significance and influence in the world, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes. That's kind of who I am, for better or for worse, in my personality, which is probably why I didn't think it was a bad idea to be named successor to a founding pastor when I was 28 years old. And you know, on my if I was honest, I think one of my unspoken goals over the last several years has been to prove that I can do this job even at a really young age. Probably not ever said that out loud, but to be honest, you know, and so at my best, you know, 1 Timothy 4:12 is like a go-to verse for me where Paul tells Timothy, don't let anyone think less of you because you're young. On my worst days and my most immature moments, I've got a chip on my shoulder, trying to prove myself, trying to make a plan, and then to execute that plan to perfection, to prove that I can do this job. But in the words of the great theologian and boxer Mike Tyson, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. We're all theologians, by the way, whether you knew that or not. And thankfully, in this role, I have never been punched in the mouth because I'm pastor at River Oaks. Praise God for that, right? But we have gone through COVID. We did go through a pretty gnarly political cycle. We've done the racial unrest and all of that kind of stuff, all well, going through the inevitable challenges that come with following a remarkable founding pastor who founded River Oaks the year I was born, buying a 25,000 square foot facility in downtown Elkhart and then doing a $1.7 million renovation to it. It's crazy to me that next month it'll be 5 years that I've been lead pastor at River Oaks. And to be honest, I'm tired. I am. Like, I'm tired. I'm not burnt out. You know, we were just on vacation for 2 weeks. I was ready to come back. I was ready to get back to work. I was ready to dig back in. But to be honest, I feel pretty weary in my spirit. Kind of tired. And so this July, our pastoral team, we're just taking turns doing something really different than the Revelation series. Just taking time to just answer the question publicly, like, what is God teaching me? What's God teaching me? If you're a fully devoted follower of Jesus, that's our goal here at River Oaks, is to develop fully devoted followers of Jesus. If you're a fully devoted follower of Jesus, that should be a question that you're always asking yourself. That should be a question that's on your radar. Like, what is God teaching me? And so today, I want to actually talk about what I feel like God has been teaching me in the midst of my weariness, in the midst of just being kind of tired and exhausted. And my hope is that in what God's teaching me, if you're feeling tired or exhausted today, that maybe God will say something to you too. So if you have your Bibles, go ahead and turn back to the Old Testament towards the beginning of your Bibles to 1 Kings chapter 19. We find the story of a prophet named Elijah, a remarkable man who he is, to give you a backdrop of this to the story that we're looking at today, he has been going toe-to-toe with what the Bible calls the worst, most wicked, evil king in Israel compared to anyone else before him. I mean, Ahab is a bad dude, and part of the reason that Ahab is a bad dude is because he married a real bad girl named Jezebel. And together, Jezebel has kind of turned Ahab's heart away from God. By extension, the entire nation of Israel has turned their back on God. They've begun worshiping this false god named Baal. And at their worst, Ahab and Jezebel, at Jezebel's instruction, gathered up as many of the prophets of God as they could and put them all to death. I mean, we're talking rough stuff here. And yet here's God. God has raised up this prophet, a man named Elijah, to oppose Ahab and Jezebel, to call the nation of Israel back to repentance. And God, man, he has been doing some incredible things through his prophet Elijah. I mean, just some, for example, Elijah prayed, and it has not rained. There's not been dew on the ground. There's been no moisture that has hit the earth for 3 years as a response to the sin of the nation of Israel, of Ahab. No, so crazy drought. Think about like how brown your grass gets. Like, do that for 3 years. Insane. And yet, through the drought, God has fed and taken care of Elijah. First, God was feeding Elijah with wild ravens. It was like Grubhub in the desert. They were just bringing him food. And then after that, there was a woman who, despite the fact that she had like nothing to give, was very generous towards Elijah. And in response to her generosity, God has given her an endless supply of flour and oil. I mean, it just never runs out. And because of that, she continues to care for Elijah. When this woman, this widow from Zarephath, when her one and only son dies, Elijah brings this boy back to life. Prays and brings him, I mean, incredible things. The story right before the one we're going to look at today was like the creme de la creme on the top of Mount Carmel. Elijah goes toe-to-toe, head-to-head with 450 prophets of Baal. One man of God versus 450 prophets of Baal. And Elijah, he calls on God, and God rains down fire from heaven, it's this incredible scene. And then Elijah goes and he executes these 450 wicked men in front of Ahab and in front of the entire nation of Israel. If that's not enough, then Elijah goes and he prays. And when he prays, it rains for the first time in 3 years. And then God gives Elijah superhuman strength, and Ahab is riding a horse-drawn chariot back to his palace. And God gives Elijah superhuman strength over a span of 25 miles. He not only catches up with Ahab, he passes him on foot. Like, it's incredible. Like what God has done and what God is doing through this man, Elijah. And then we read this in 1 Kings 19. Verse 1. When Ahab got home, he told his wife Jezebel everything Elijah had done, including the way he had killed all the prophets of Baal. And so Jezebel, he sent this message to Elijah, and he said, "May the gods strike me and even kill me if by this time tomorrow I have not killed you just as you killed them." Elijah was afraid, and he fled for his life. He went to Beersheba, a town in Judah, and he left his servant there. Then he went on alone into the wilderness, traveling all day, and he sat under a solitary broom tree and prayed that he might die. "I had enough, Lord," he said. "Take my life, for I am no better than my ancestors who have already died." So God has done this incredible work through Elijah. Like he's just seeing God's power. And Jezebel comes along and she threatens him and he freaks out. And he freaks out and he's afraid and he goes on the run and he makes the 95-mile journey on foot from Jezreel down to the southern tip of Judah in Beersheba. And then once he gets there, he's like, "That's not good enough. You stay here." And he wanders alone even further, a day's journey out into the wilderness. And there we find Elijah, the powerful man of God. He is afraid, he is alone, and he is ready to die. Which is not actually too dissimilar from Moses in Numbers 11, when Moses is leading the people of God through the desert, and he just gets fed up at some point. He's just so ready to be done. He's just so annoyed that he's just like, "God, I'm ready to be done. I'm ready to die." Now, to be clear, I've never asked God to die. That's not the point that I'm trying to make here. But I think when you look at the life of Elijah, when you look at the life of Moses, what we see that's really clear is leadership is hard. Leading people is hard. It doesn't matter what realm it is. It doesn't matter if you're a leader in a business. It doesn't matter if you lead a team at work. It doesn't matter if you think about the leadership in your family and your marriage, leading your children. Leading children is hard. Ministry. Being a community group leader here at River Oaks, leadership is hard, and chances are, if you lead for long enough, you will find yourself tired at some point. Like, you're just going to be weary. And yet, here's what I'll tell you, okay? When you're tired, everything seems worse than what it really is. When you are tired, everything seems worse than what it really is. Later on in 1 Kings 19, verse 10, Elijah has another interaction with God, and this is what it says. Elijah replied, "I have zealously served the Lord God Almighty. But the people of Israel, they have broken their covenant with you, torn down your altars, and killed every one of your prophets. And I am the only one left, and now they are trying to kill me too." Now here's the problem with that statement. It's honest, but it's not true. Elijah is not the only one left, and he knew that. Because earlier in 1 Kings 18, Elijah interacted with a man named Obadiah who, even though he remained faithful to God, was actually the head of evil King Ahab's palace. And what we learn in that interaction is that Obadiah tells Elijah, "Hey, when Jezebel tried to kill everyone, I was the guy that hid 100 prophets in caves, and I gave them everything they needed in order to spare their lives." And so in this moment, Elijah, if he was honest, he actually knows that there is 101 at least other faithful people. It's not as bad as what he says it is, and yet here he is looking at God going, "I'm the only one. I am the only one left." See, when we're tired, everything seems worse than what it really is. Our perspective becomes distorted, like putting on a pair of tinted glasses. The world around us is all colored in kind of this negative hue. We become like Eeyore, and the glass is always half empty. It's never half full. And so what was true of Elijah back then is true of us in our weariness, is that when we're tired, we focus on the negatives instead of the positives. It's just what happens. For Elijah, his focus was on the fact that Jezebel had killed everyone else, when she really hadn't. But that was his perspective. And that's where his focus was, instead of the fact that, wow, I just watched God defeat 450 prophets of Baal. Like, look at the incredible things that God has done. In our weariness, we become fixated on the negatives and we begin discounting the positives. Elijah had lost sight of the fact that God had just rained down fire from heaven, and it just rained for the first time in 3 years, and that God had brought a little boy back to life through him, that God had empowered Elijah to run a marathon faster than a horse. And yet all he could see was the negative. And this is what happens when we're tired, when we're weary. We just become hyper-focused on the negative. We become fixated on that one piece of critical feedback instead of the 5 positive emails. You become focused on how do we respond to this one person who's a pain in my side instead of remembering and celebrating the 5 that are in your corner cheering you on. You allow one bad day to ruin the other 6 good days in the week. And so here's God's response to Elijah's weariness. And it's not as sophisticated or spiritual as we may initially think, at least. In 1 Kings 19:5, it says, "Then he, Elijah, lay down, and he slept under the broom tree. But as he was sleeping, an angel touched him and told him, 'Get up and eat.' And he looked around, and there beside his head was some bread baked on hot stones and a jar of water. So he ate and drank, and then he went back to sleep." See, God's response to Elijah's weariness, at least initially, is just to have him take a nap and eat some food. Just take a nap and get a snack. See, in our weariness, I think oftentimes the answer, at least initially, is not rocket science. It's not that hard. It's actually pretty simple. It's just get some rest, get some sleep, and to eat well. I don't know about you. Being hangry is a real thing for me. You know what I'm talking about? You know what I'm talking about. When you're so hungry that you become irritable and angry, it's super easy to see it in your kids or your grandkids because they act like they're about to die, you know? Like their stomach grumbles once, like, "Oh, I'm going to starve," you know? I think as adults, it's hopefully not as dramatic. And yet, it's there. If we're honest, at least for a lot of us, is that sometimes the simplest response to our weariness is to just prioritize physical rest and to eat well. And yet, here's what I'll say, the recovery that is needed to address the kind of weariness and tiredness that I'm talking about goes beyond that, because the weariness that I'm talking about today is actually more almost of a spiritual weariness than it is physical. And so what we see happen next is God takes Elijah on a journey of spiritual rejuvenation. Now, those are careful words. I intended to say it that way because spiritual rejuvenation is often, it's a process. It's not quick, it's not efficient, which drives me nuts. It's not like flipping a light switch. Instead, it's a process that we go through. 1 Kings 19, verse 8 says, "So he got up and ate and drank, and the food gave him enough strength to travel 40 days and 40 nights to Mount Sinai, the mountain of God." Now, from the broom tree in Beersheba, Elijah goes further into the wilderness to the mountain of God, known as Mount Sinai, Mount Horeb. This is the same mountain, by the way, that Moses is on twice. Once he interacts with God in a burning bush, and then this is the same place that God gives Moses the 10 Commandments. And so this is like sacred ground. Like, this is holy ground on earth. This is the place that if you need a fresh encounter with God, this is the place that you go. If you need to be spiritually rejuvenated, like, you're going to Mount Sinai. Now, here's what's interesting, though, about this text. It says that it takes Elijah 40 days and 40 nights to get to Sinai. From Beersheba, it's a 14-day walk. This is not an efficient journey. This is not punch it into Google Maps and see what the quickest way to get there is. No, instead, what happens is Elijah leaves the broom tree outside of Beersheba, and he goes and he wanders through the desert for 40 days and 40 nights, the same exact desert that the people of God wandered in for 40 years as they learned to trust God. God takes Elijah on a spiritual journey of rejuvenation. And so when he finally gets there, 1 Kings 19, verse 9, it says this, "But the Lord said to him, 'Elijah, what are you doing here, man?' And Elijah replied, 'I have zealously served the Lord God Almighty. But the people of Israel have broken their covenant with you, tore down your altars, and killed every one of your prophets. I am the only one left, and now they are trying to kill me too.'" When you are tired, be honest with God. And be honest with others about how you're feeling. I think sometimes as Christians, we're like, I can't be honest like that. I can't be honest because the joy of the Lord is my strength. I got to be joyful. Everything's fine. Somebody else has it worse than me, we should be joyful. And, there's nothing wrong with that. But one of the things that God's teaching me right now is part of this process of becoming spiritually rejuvenated is to be honest with God and others about how you're actually feeling. And part of that is to be honest about how you got there. How did you get here? I'm guilty of having conversations with the chairman of our elders here at River Oaks, Tyler Springer. And one of the questions he always asks me is he looks at me and goes, "So how are you doing?" I was looking at him and I go, I'm fine. Because inside, I'm kind of like, man, I want to be competent. I should be able to do this, right? I should be able to navigate all the stuff that's going on. Like, I don't want to appear weak or needy or whatever, He's gotten to know me well enough. He goes, yeah, okay, stop. Like, how are you doing? Like, what's actually going on? And God's teaching me that there's actually something really healthy and cathartic about sharing with God and sharing with others about what's actually going on in your life. That, your personal struggles do not disqualify you from being used by God. Now, if you need permission to do that and you're like, I still don't know about that, go read Jeremiah 20. Jeremiah, another prophet in the Old Testament. Crazy, awesome man of God. And in Jeremiah 20, at the beginning, Jeremiah, he just gives, he looks at God and he goes, God, you deceived me. God, and I fell for your deception. Because God, you told me that you had plans for me. You had plans to prosper me and give me a hope and a future. God, you said all this great, and it does not feel that way, God. Imagine sitting in your men's or women's huddle in your community group and somebody next to you starts praying that prayer out loud. Think about that. Sitting there and all of a sudden somebody's like, God, you deceived me. You scoot over on the couch because you're in a lightning bolt and I'm not going to be close to that. We just don't pray that way. We don't feel like we have permission to be that honest with God or with each other. And yet, here's what I tell you, just be honest because God knows what you're thinking anyway. It'll actually help you. It'll feel better for it to come out of your mouth. To share it with God or to share it with somebody that you know really cares for you. And so, then verse 11, we see God's response to Elijah's honesty. And he demonstrates his power. And he does these things that are often associated with God's judgment. It's kind of God's way of going, hey, I can take care of this. And the first thing we see is this windstorm that's so powerful, it's like ripping rocks off the mountain. It's crazy. The next thing we see is we see an earthquake. There's this huge earthquake, and then finally there's fire. I don't know what that is. There's just fire. It says there's fire. And yet it says in each one of these things, in the storm, in the quake, and in the fire, it says that God was not in it. Now what that phrase means is that that wasn't the expression of God Elijah was looking for. He wasn't looking for God to demonstrate his power. He didn't need a spectacular reminder of who God was, because Elijah, he never doubted God. Elijah never lost his faith in God. He had just lost faith in himself. You know, am I the right guy for the job? I feel like I fail sometimes. Like, God, I've seen you demonstrate your power. I have no doubt about you, but maybe the problem is me. That's why the people won't repent. That's why it seems like there's conflict around every corner. Maybe there's something wrong with me. Because I know you've given me this task, this responsibility of leadership. But maybe I can't actually do what you've called me to. See, what Elijah was looking for at Sinai was not a revelation that demonstrated God's power. What he was looking for was a personal revelation that would rejuvenate his spirit. He just needed some affirmation that, Elijah, I'm not done with you yet. And so God, after these 3 remarkable acts of power, God speaks to Elijah in a whisper. Depending on how you translate the Hebrew there, it's God speaks to Elijah in the silence. And he says 2 things. He says, Elijah, I still have purpose for you. He gives him clarity on his next 3 tasks. Elijah, I still got work for you to do. And then he says, Elijah, you're not alone. He says, hey, I know you feel alone, but I've actually preserved 7,000 people who have remained faithful to me. You're not alone. I'm not done with you yet. And so, how do we think about this practically, right? How do we either avoid weariness, avoid exhaustion, and maybe what do we do when we find ourselves there? And again, not rocket science. But I think a big part of it is we got to create a rhythm for our lives that prioritizes physical rest and spiritual rejuvenation. You got to create a rhythm for your life. The solution to burnout and weariness is not maybe what you think, you know, because I think there's like this false narrative out there that people think, well, once I get past X, once I get past this event, then everything's going to get better. You know, everything's going to slow down. You know, once I finish seminary, once we make it through COVID, once we get to the other side of the election, once this building project is done, once the building project is paid for, it's going to get better. For Elijah, he had to be thinking, okay, once it rains again, once we defeat the prophets of Baal, like, we're going to be good. And yet it always seems like there's a ticked-off Jezebel waiting to try and kill you. Doesn't it? I mean, there always seems like there's the next thing. There's always something next. Carey Nieuwhof, he says it this way: if your season never changes, it's not a season, it's your life. If your season that you're in, you're like, oh, it's just a crazy season. If your season never changes, it's not a season, it's your life. And so he says then the solution to burnout, the solution to weariness is not getting more time off. It's how you spend your time on. It's creating a rhythm in your everyday life that prioritizes physical rest and spiritual rejuvenation. The answer is not more vacation. I was just on vacation for 2 weeks in Hawaii. I got to tell you, I got back, I still feel tired. Because if you've ever gone on vacation with children, there's a difference between vacation and a family trip. When you go with children, you get back and you need a vacation from your vacation. So you've got to create a rhythm in your normal life that prioritizes physical rest, spiritual rejuvenation. You got to get sleep, you need to eat well, and then you have to find time to get away to go to Sinai. You got to get on holy ground. Maybe maybe it's your bedroom, maybe it's a closet somewhere. I don't know where it is for you. You've got to find a place to get away, to create time and space to go on a journey with God. Because if you go and you're like, okay, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to open my Bible. I'm going to sit down. I'm going to read my Bible and pray one time. At the end of that one time, you're probably not going to feel any better. But if you prioritize it for 40 days, I think you might start to. It's a process. It's a journey. That's why in Luke 5:16, it says that even Jesus, he often withdrew to the wilderness for prayer. If Jesus had to get away to be with the Father in prayer, like if God in the flesh had to do it, we probably got to do it too. To put that in our rhythm of our everyday life. And then the other thing I'd tell you is to get alone with God, but do not isolate from community. Get alone with God, but do not be isolated from community. Elijah got alone with God, but God didn't keep Elijah in the wilderness. In fact, one of the tasks he gave him, part of the solution for Elijah was to go and anoint Elisha. See, part of the solution was God gave Elijah a friend. He gave him a partner in ministry. And I think our inclination when we get really tired, when we get exhausted, is we want to isolate ourselves. And in our loneliness, we actually spiral farther and become more negative. And so practice solitude, but not isolation. Get alone with Jesus, but do not be lonely. In fact, it's in our weariness that we actually need community more. And I know you introverts are like, that is the last thing I need. I need to be alone. And here's what, when I say community, I'm not telling you to throw a party. I'm telling you to have coffee with your best friend. Just be honest about what's going on. I'm telling you to prioritize date night with your spouse. I'm telling you to lean into your community group. Just don't text in and say, sorry, can't make it again. Got things going on. To join a community group if you need community around you. But do not isolate yourself in your weariness. It's not going to take you anywhere good. Because here's what I think those are just simple, but if you do those things, over time, if you do the things that in my weariness God is teaching me, I think maybe he'll teach you the same thing. God is not done with you yet. He has a purpose for you. He has more for you. And you are not alone. Let's pray. Father, I thank you for your Holy Spirit that gives us comfort and encouragement, that gives us peace. God, I thank you for your word. I thank you that you promise never to leave us or to forsake us. I thank you that you tell us to just cast all of our cares on you because you love us. God, I thank you for examples of men like Elijah in the Bible who did so much for you and you did so much through them. And yet you allow us to see their humanity. You allow us to see their weakness so that it can be an encouragement to us. So I just pray that by the power of your Spirit, if there's anyone in here today, anybody watching online, that they would just say, yeah, I'm tired today. I'm just weary. It's just been a long road. May your Spirit give them a fresh experience of your love and of your grace and of your mercy, that they would continue to press on towards the goal that you have set before them, that you would remind them, God, that they are not alone and that you are not done with them. Because as long as we are drawing breath in our lungs, God, you have something for us. And so I just pray in this moment you would give them a desire to lean into community, to step out of anonymity or out of isolation, and to begin to walk closer with you and to walk closer with your church, your bride, your body. We thank you so much that your promises are good and true. And it's in the name of Jesus I pray. Amen.